Okay, so the next tutorial that we're going to look at here, like I mentioned previously, is going to be some advanced curve commands and sort of applying everything we've learned to flesh out the capabilities of what we're designing here. So to recap, primarily for drawing, we're going to be using our curve line tools or shape tools right here. I'm going to stick with the command point or control point curve. And let's start with something really basic here and have my snaps. I'm going to just turn them off here because I don't need the grid for what we're doing here. So I'm going to just click a shape. I don't know what it is. It looks sort of like a elephant, I guess. It doesn't matter. And this is what we're going to apply a bunch of these commands to. So the first one I'm going to use is probably one that I use as much as the mirror command I mentioned before. And that's over here called the trim tool. What this lets you do is take an existing curve and use intersecting curves to cut it apart and subtract the area that you're working with. That sounds kind of confusing, but when you see it in practice, it'll make sense. So I'm working with my command here. Let's say I wanted to divide the shape up with lines. So I've got the curve tool here. I'm going to draw just a wavy line here through that. I want it to be offset by a similar amount, so I'm going to click this, click copy. I'm just going to drag it down so it looks like that. So now you can see we've got a bunch of intersecting curves. Now, if I select all of the curves that I want to start trimming and then hit the trim command, it's going to say select object to trim. So when it tells you to do this, you're going to select the parts you want to start trimming off using all these, what they consider cutting surfaces. So if I zoom in a little bit here and I click on this section of the intersection points here, it'll cut it off. Similarly, this part here, using these points as the cutting objects, cuts it off. And then here, cuts it off. And then on the other side, cuts it off. So what you've done is you've trimmed this part and this part using these curves as your guide, and now we have the section that's cut out from here. Now, this is incredibly useful if you're trying to divide up sections or make distinct shapes within your shapes. That's kind of hard to describe what I use it for, but I use this command all the time. It's really useful. Similarly, if you're not just using lines, let's say we wanted to cut out circles from our shape here. If we draw a simple circle like this, and again, the points have to be intersecting, which is why you always want to be working in the same window. If I move this one here, and let's say I copy it like this. If I select all, and you don't have to select these ones if you're only cutting up here. Basically, all that really matters is just selecting the main curve and the ones you're subtracting it from. So if they're selected, I hit trim, I click here, here, click here, here, and here. There you go. Simple as that. It's cut the shape out. And one thing to notice is that these are all separate curves. They are connected, and as long as you don't drag them around, they'll still stay connected when you do the trim commands. And as you can see, if we were to take this, click our surface command to get the actual two-dimensional surface, and then click our render button. There you go. Now, another good command to use in conjunction with trim when you're splitting all these things into small components is the one directly above it that looks like a puzzle piece called join. This one is simple in that it takes all the curves you select, holding down shift to select a group, and when you click this, it merges them into one so that they're all one again. and you don't have to worry about losing the different sections. I do use that every once in a while when I want to keep things grouped together. You can notice down here, it's not joined, so these are all separate. This command is useful for that. This one that looks like an explosion is explode, and it does the opposite of join. So if we click our top section that's been combined, we click explode, separates them all into single components again. Alright? So another useful command that I like to use in conjunction with these other two, especially if I'm trying to get a certain shape and I don't really know how I want to manipulate it yet, is actually going to be this one here. Control points on. So let's use a simple shape for the sake of demonstration here. So I'm going to draw a circle, click my object. Clicking control points is going to turn on all of the individual vertex points that it assigns to the shape. So when you do that, it is got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 points that it's assigned to this circle. And when you click one of these little dots and drag, you can stretch and deform the curve. And this works for shapes, it works for single curves. Anything that exists in this 2D plane has control points. And so, using this, you can drag your shape out and change it. You're going to want to be careful of dragging too much and causing it to intersect itself, because then it's not going to create a surface when you try. It's going to most likely give you some sort of error if you do that. But doing that, you can play around with the shapes a lot, and it's very useful for just manipulating things to get it to look just right. And if you hit escape twice, it'll get rid of all the points. And so if we look at our more complex shape here, select everything, control points on. As you can see, since it's much more complex, there's a ton of points on here. So as you can see here, the control point command is really useful for making a lot of really specific edits or manipulations to what you're doing, in conjunction with other things like split or trim command I just showed you. You can do a lot with the different shapes. Basically, you can make whatever you can visualize and then make it to your specifications. It's quite useful. So another feature that I've used on some of my more geometric looking designs comes from the transform toolbar up here, and it's this one that looks like a circle, the polar array. When you click this command, select your objects, hit enter, it lets you pick a central point to array multiple copies of these objects completely around in 360 degrees. So if I click in the center here, and up here where it says number of items, I said 4, and then if I don't drag anywhere and just hit enter, it's going to use 360 degrees. As you can see here, it is taking this object and copy it 4 times completely around in a circle. That's very handy when you're trying to create multi-component items that have much different parts and you want it to be equally spaced or equally rotated around. I like doing this in conjunction with things like the trim tool. If I wanted to do something like this, and then just trim it across. Like so. And I've cut that circle shape out. You can really just play around all the different combinations of commands to do stuff like that. Do something like this, just mirror it. Part of what I like about Rhino as a design software, which I know it's not designed for, is just its ability to do really advanced stuff like this quickly. It lends itself well to creating a lot of, I guess, what people would consider tribal type emblem designs. I use it to do all of my main 2D design work. It's pretty good. So I think the last thing I'll go through as part of this intermediate advanced level command is how to change the color of the two-dimensional surfaces that we're rendering into actual images. So first I'll take these 4 objects I created, I'll drag over all to select, click the surface tool, create the two-dimensional surfaces, and just like we saw before, it renders white on this off maroon color, which I'm really not a big fan of, so I'm gonna change that back to gray. So what if we want to render this as something that's not white? Well, simply enough, we select all the surfaces. If we drag around the whole thing, it's going to select the curves too, but this command is only going to affect the actual created surfaces, so it doesn't matter if we have the curves selected. Select them all, go up to the color wheel here next to these buttons, Object Properties, and this is going to be where we can manipulate the properties of the surfaces here. So we want to drop it down to Material, which is the surface, and then select Basic. And now we can change the color of what we're rendering. So let's say we wanted to go bright green. Hit OK. Close this out. Now when we render, we have green. And you can do this for any surfaces you want. If you want them to be different colors here on the inside, select those and set the properties. One thing that's pretty handy, let's say we change this to brown. And let's say we like that color better and we want to set the rest of these to be brown as well without having to manually select on the control wheel. Select everything, deselect these, this is the color we want. Go up to the properties, raw material, notice it shows that they're green the way we set it before. If you click match, it's going to take all the properties of another object we select and apply it to these ones we've selected here. So hit OK. Now it's going to ask us to select what we're matching. You click the brown section. So we just click this one, select everything. The window got messed up there. Select everything, go back, hit match, hit OK. You select the brown surface. And you'll see the selection menu come up if you selected something that multiple objects are lying on top of. And it'll ask you to pick which one you want if it detects multiple things that are intersecting. So you want the surface that's brown. And now, close this out, after using match, it has applied that color to everything. Very handy. Turn that off. So, using the different surface commands and property settings, you can basically assign all sorts of different colors or properties based on how you want your design to look. So I think that will do it for this particular lesson. The whole point of this was to go through some of the more advanced commands, primarily the trim command, since that's one of the more important things you'll need to learn how to do. And also control points. Those two things give you quite a bit of freedom as far as what you manipulate and how you can sort of apply all these different commands to whatever shapes you're drawing. There's really no limit to what you can do as long as you have an idea in your head. That's one thing I like about this program. So I think that's it. If you have any questions about things I've gone over in the past, or are running into any problems as you're learning the program, just let me know in the comments, and I'll either address them directly or put them into the next tutorial video to sort of address there, to make sure we don't have anything hanging out there as far as questions go. Alright? See you next time.